as she said, Elizabeth J. Smith, as most of you know, just Elizabeth Smith. So I'm going to be reading to you today from my book, Tales of Harriford, Grange, Volume 1. And it's a set of 4 Christian historical romance short stories, and each one deals with a different hero and heroine, as well as different settings and challenges, different settings, subjects and challenges. I think I was going to mess that up. Okay, it's a fictional town in England called Harriford, Grange, and it just, a name that kind of spoke to me as sounding like something over in England. Like Harriford, anyway, it's set in the late 1800s, so it's set after Jane Austen. Jane Austen was more in the early 1800s, whereas this is like Keira Knightley, Pride and Prejudice, is set in the late 1800s. So you can think about like what they wear in that movie. I'm going to read to you from the first short story. It's called The Doctor's Daughter, and it's the funniest one of the 4. The other 3 are a little more serious, and I don't really want to read serious stuff in front of y'all, so I chose that one. So in The Doctor's Daughter, it's the first one I wrote. I wanted to write a story where the hero and the heroine just could not seem to figure out how to communicate with each other, and I wanted it to be different from a normal historical romance where everything's just perfect and everybody's looks perfect and everything. So I wanted to make it more realistic, and also to throw in something kind of unusual with her being 7 years older than him, which back then would have been unusual, and it's still unusual today, but it's not like crazy long time. So you're going to hear 3 different characters in the reading: Dr. Colin Byrne, the new doctor, Miss Edith Caldwell, the doctor's daughter, and Miss Louisa Musgrave, who is Edith's good friend. And if I don't talk loud enough at some point, or if I talk too fast, please let me know. So I think we're just going to dive right in to save my voice from cutting out. I had a little bit more, but I think y'all figure it out as we go. So the point of view actually changes between Colin and Edith, so I'll try to make those transitions clear, because as I was reading it, I realized that I probably should have put some things to make this a little more clear. So it's one of those things you learn. Okay. Colin arrived promptly at 6 with a small box of dark chocolate hearts. He would have bought the largest box they had, but he feared they might be overdoing it. The beauty which opened the door took his breath away. She'd redone her normally tightly knotted chestnut curls into a loose updo, a few escaped ringlets framing her heart-shaped face. Her thick white nurse's dress was replaced with a light green muslin gown, which brought out her emerald eyes. He held out the chocolates, unable to form a cohesive thought. "Dark chocolate hearts, my favorite. How did you know?" "A little bird told me." She thanked him and grabbed a light wrap, locking the door behind her. As she took his arm, he noticed she wasn't wearing gloves. He placed his hand casually on hers and relished in the smoothness of her skin. They wandered down the slowly darkening lane toward the Tea Biscuit, the best local eatery. Inside the simply decorated dining room, he led the way to a table in the back corner and pulled out her chair. He seated himself and picked up his menu, glancing frequently over it at his dining companion. After they'd ordered, he leaned forward, not wanting to miss a thing. "So, Doctor, how are you liking the practice in Harriford Grange?" "I love it," he stammered, as if changing his words mid-sentence. He gulped down half of his glass of water. "I'm glad to hear that. I hope you'll stay for a while. I think you're a perfect fit for our little town." "Oh, I do plan to stay, most definitely." She laughed at his enthusiasm, even as a seed of jealousy threatened to sprout. She tamped it down and changed the subject. "Louisa Musgrave is a lovely young woman. I've known her since she was born. I'd say it's about time she was happily settled." "Why on earth did she bring that up?" She quirked her eyebrow at his reddened face. I suppose so. Another gulp, and his glass was empty. Has she any suitors? No one in particular, but I fancy quite a few young men have noticed her since she returned. If one is interested, he better step up now and claim her heart before the others work up the nerve. Ah. He looked everywhere but at her before dropping his eyes to his lap. Say, do you like cricket? Stunned for a moment by his sudden change of topic, she shook her head. I've not had much experience with it, but many of my schoolmates play during recess. Do you? Ever since I was a boy, that's how he pointed to his crooked nose, broke my nose. His equally crooked smile made her grin. How did that happen? I was 11, and one of my mates swung the bat back and hit me square in the face. Not only did I come away with quite a bloody nose, I also discovered my true calling. It made you want to become a doctor? Yes, it did, he replied with a laugh. His brown eyes warmed as he held her gaze, sending delightful chills down her arms. He leaned forward and motioned for her hand. She gave it to him, half hoping he would kiss it. He didn't, but as he held it, he traced circles on its back. I told you were beautiful. I was wrong. Taken aback, she tried unsuccessfully to pull her hand away. He leaned closer, jostling the table. He dropped her hand as they both scrambled to catch their glasses and teacups. Oh, bother, he exclaimed, tossing his wet napkin. Their food came at that moment, and they ate the rest of their meal in awkward silence. Wednesday evening's worship service brought Colin a private moment with Louisa. Edith was happily engaged in conversation with the Mrs. Woodburn when he caught Louisa's eye and motioned to the vestibule. We've got a problem, he blurted, combing his hair with shaking fingers. To her inquiring look, he explained, she thinks I'm in love with you. At this, Louisa blanched. He scowled at her, his indignity tempered by relief. He didn't think he was that bad-looking. I'm sorry, Dr. Byrne, she replied once recovered. I can't imagine looking for that impression. It's all right. So what do I do about it? A sly smile slid across Louisa's pert mouth. I say we use this to your advantage, Doctor. I don't follow. Don't you see, if we make her jealous... No, I don't think that's a good idea. Louisa stomped her foot and crossed her arms. And why not? Wouldn't it be like lying? Oh, I suppose so. I didn't think of that. So what do you propose to do? Propose. That's it. You're going to propose to her even before you know how she feels about you? Yes, and you'll help me. She peered dubiously up at him. And how will I do that? Get her to talk about me. Find out what she thinks, if she would ever love me. While you do that, I'll think about my proposal. It'll have to be the best. Louisa smiled conspiratorially. I believe you've come up with a sound plan. I think it just might work. Very good. And thank you, Miss Musgrave, for your help, he replied, bowing gratefully over her hand, at which time she giggled. You're very welcome, Dr. Byrne. Do you want me to keep going? Edith gawked at the sight. The nerve of him, whisking Louisa into the privacy of the vestibule, whispering in her ear and kissing her hand. How improper! Stomping to the side door, she was out of the chapel and halfway home before she heard fast footsteps behind her. Why did you leave without me? Dr. Byrne asked between whiffs of air. She refused to take his arm and hastened onward. I think you know very well, Doctor. Louisa is a beautiful young lady, and I consider her my sister, so you'd best watch yourself. Sneaking off for a private moment, indeed. I've never seen such. Let go of me. She jerked away from him, ran inside, and slammed the door in his face. The chill in the clinic the next morning was palpable. During a brief break, Colin shut himself in his office and slumped into his chair. He never shut up and confided in Louisa. Edith seemed determined to play matchmaker, albeit a sullen and spiteful one. Could she not see his devotion to her or feel his love? He groaned before slamming his crooked nose into a stack of papers. This was a disaster. At least he still had his proposal to plan. Maybe that would get through to her. Edith greeted Louisa warmly that evening, despite her misgivings about likely topics of conversation. What a pleasant surprise, my dear Louisa. Tilly is almost finished with supper. Please join me. Louisa looked searchingly about the room. I was expecting Dr. Byrne to be dining with you. Edith felt a pang in her heart as she remembered their quarrel. He usually does, but he preferred to dine at home this evening. But do join me, my friend. We've not had a chance to catch up. Louisa heartily agreed, and soon their light soup and sandwich supper was served in the small dining room. While they began with discussion of Louisa's trip abroad, the little minx wowed the conversation back to the handsome Dr. Byrne. He is handsome, don't you agree, my dear Edith? Indeed, he is very handsome. And his eyes? What about them? Well, what do you think about them? They're kind. Have you noticed how the gold flakes perfectly complement his hair? Louisa appeared rather blank at this observation. I quite like freckles, don't you? I do, and his are rather abundant. Edith giggled nervously. What was wrong with her? She was fawning over the doctor more than fair Louisa. Louisa grinned as if she had a secret. He'd be quite a catch, don't you agree? Edith couldn't keep the wistfulness out of her voice as she nodded. If I were younger, well, never mind. She cast her gaze down a moment, determined to be happy for her friend, and rose to find Louisa smiling at her. What is it? Edith asked. All in due time, sweet sister, all in due time. Edith rushed to the kitchen to grab their dessert and tea, as well as to soothe her aching heart. If only she were young and pretty, then maybe the handsome doctor would notice her instead. If you would like to find out what happens between Dr. Byrne and Edith, almost said the wrong name, and Edith, then those of you who haven't already, we have books available for purchase here as well as on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. It's also on Kindle. And thank y'all so much for your kind attention and for putting up with my voice. And I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have and enjoy our visit. Thanks so much for coming.
What inspired you to?
What inspired me? Well, before we got our daughter, I went through several really, really hard years of infertility, and I was reading a lot of books. Amy at the library was having to order tons and tons of books for me to read. And I was reading a lot of what was available at this library is a lot of historical romance, and it's Christian historical romance, but it just felt so fake to me, where the hero is 6.5 feet tall, broad shoulders, tiny waist, super handsome, and the woman always has a waist, about that big around, and long, gorgeous hair. And it just felt so fake to me. And I wanted to write. I love writing, and that's what I do to release tension and stuff. And so I wanted to write a story. It started off just one story about a hero and a heroine that they weren't the typical hero and heroine. Like Dr. Byrne, he's tall and he's handsome to Edith, but he's not super handsome. He's kind of tall and lanky. He's got reddish brown hair, and he's got a crooked nose from where he broke it, and he's got freckles, and which I think freckles are cute, but not everybody likes freckles, especially back then. And then Edith, as you'll read in the story, she's got, like me, she's got acne, and she's got scars from smallpox, and she doesn't feel beautiful, but of course he thinks she's beautiful. And I think that's what's important, for your husband to find, or if you're dating, or your husband to love you, for what you look like. You don't have to be a supermodel. And so many of the historical romances feel like that to me. So that was probably really long.
You just got 3 more books that you need to put to the side. 3 more.
Any more?
So when will Volume 2 be out?
Hopefully in November, as long as Marion will let me cooperate. Yeah, usually do this after she's gone to bed at night, because during the day she is hit or miss.
She demands all your attention when she's away. I understand.
If I try to do something, she won't nap. Yeah, so I'm hoping, shooting for November 16th, because that's the day Jonathan proposed to me, so I thought that was a good date.
Sweet.
Do you have any more questions? I could talk about this all day, but I'm not gonna bore y'all with it.
So thank you again for coming to the shop. If you need to get your book signed, Elizabeth will be more than happy to sign. If you need to purchase a book, you can purchase a book. They're $6 from her, and she takes cash, credit card, and a check. And thank you again. And if you've never been in, take the time to look around the shop also.
Did I have to work today, so it's you?